Tune in to the Fintech Files for exclusive interviews with fintech executives and thought leaders. We will talk about how the industry will overcome the crisis that has marked the start of the decade, how it can be part of the solution, and how the financial world will evolve in the next decade. This is your host, George Alaferis from Arama.
On this episode, I speak to Rick Veronese. Rick is a fintech product designer. He's helped many fintech startups to get and retain users by improving their product's UX or user experience. We'll talk about the scientific approach to design and why good design matters even if you're in a technical B2B niche, as well as the usual about career and growth tips. Rick, great to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We're in June now. In the UK, we're still living pretty crazy times, so it's still a lockdown in effect. Can you tell us a little bit how you're surviving this period?
Of course. You say it's crazy times. I think it's very, what would you say? I guess it's a matter of perspective. I agree it's crazy, but I kept saying, people have been asking me, what do you think about lockdown has changed as things changed for you? And I kept saying, not that much. I went freelance about 7 months ago. And not that much has changed for me, but it's true to an extent. But it was definitely challenging at the beginning. On a professional level, I can't say if the lockdown has helped, but it's been good actually. I've been able to find clients quite easily, and I was already used to working from home and remotely, anyways. So things have been good, man. I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, well done. And we were just discussing just beforehand how this has broken some taboos, and for me as well. Eventually, I decided to do this podcast, which I would never have dared before, and it's just about doing it. And I guess we're lucky that we run our business lean and digitally.
Yes.
So we're going to talk more about that, but your background is a designer, and now I know you do a lot of work and you probably specialize in fintech. So could you tell us a little bit about how and why you chose this industry?
For sure. So I would say pretty much like anything else in my life, I stumbled upon fintech. It was by chance. Mm-hmm. My first full-time job was in a company called Money.co.uk. And it's a comparison website basically for financial services. So anything from credit cards, insurance, anything like that was just in there. And I wasn't really that interested in it at the beginning, I have to be honest. But as I progressed in my career, big part of my job is researching, speaking to people. And I realized that I really liked helping people with their finances, understanding what their problems are, what their motivations are around finances. And it's such an essential part of life that it made me realize, there's so much work to be done in this space. So I might as well get to it and start doing it,
All right. So you embraced it as you were working in it. And
exactly.
So you're now your own boss, and can you tell us a little bit more about what you do for companies? What services do you offer?
For sure. I help technical and non-technical founders to create brand new digital products or improve their existing one. So what I do is a look at the UX of their product, at the strategy, and the research is a big part of it. And I would say at this point, it's a mix of consulting and hands-on, getting down to it, and production. So very much like getting down to business with design still and testing concepts with potential users. So it's a mix of research and product design.
All right. And how does it work? Can you tell us a bit more about the research? Because I can imagine what, how the product design looks like.
Yeah.
How do you go about researching, especially if you're not particularly aware of the industry or the type of product they do? What does it involve, and kind of what are the steps before going to proper design and production?
Right. So like you said, you don't know before you look into it, right? So whenever I start a project, whenever I start anything really in design, if it's for a client, obviously, I tend to try to understand what they need done and what they think they need done. It's really essential. And what I do is basically I play devil's advocate in a way. I speak to businesses, right? I don't speak to users directly. So I need to understand what they think needs to be done, what their problem is. And then I go onto the next stage, which is validating those assumptions. Most people, most founders, most people that work in any company have assumptions about how their product work, what problems it solves, and things like that. What I do is I go speak to their users and see, okay, is there a match here or not? And that's a big part of it, really. So it's a mix of qualitative with user interviews, sitting down with potential users or current users if your product is already existing, and digging deep into their needs, speaking to them and understanding what they actually need. If the product that exists does that, that's great. We can work on it. If not, then we have a baseline. So that's pretty much what the research is about. It's as I said, qualitative in terms of speaking to people, and quantitative is about using the data that comes out of maybe surveys or any kind of data analytics, anything like that, to use that and measure it against the design in a way. So if I am to change, to make a design change, we can measure that data against the changes and see what works and what doesn't. Hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes perfect sense. And we talk about design and we'll classify it as a creative industry. But your methodology, the research that you describe, is pretty scientific. If maybe that's another statement, but you have assumptions, but you don't take them for granted. You test them, and then that means the design that you do is not just a good idea. It's something that is backed by research and data, right?
Yeah, so it's a mix, right? So that research side of things, it's very evidence heavy. And then, I think you need that to go and do something with any product. I think you need that to then spark the creativity. It's my personal opinion, to be honest. If you ask many other designers, will probably say that's not the way to go. Mm-hmm. As in, when you want to innovate, you don't really you're trying to create something new, right? You're trying to create something that doesn't exist. And how do you get evidence on that? I think there's still some way to really understand what people need and what they're motivated to achieve, and then from there still work on that assumption. Think like what you can do about their problem.
Yeah. No, I totally relate to that. I mean, when we create content for companies, we also have to educate and talk a lot about that, because people typically go with the ideas they have or the assumptions they make. Say, oh, this is going to be interesting, but in fact, you can get a lot of data, and you may use it or not, but it's anyway a good tool to have. It reduces the risk, if anything else, of what's the impact is going to be. So it's very interesting to have your perspective on design on that, because it's something I fully relate to.
Right.
So you said like you started your freelance career, and I think you're doing a great job at building your personal brand as well. And you mentioned it's working well for you. So how does how is business growing? How do you acquire your clients?
So I've tried to use just one platform, and at this point in time is LinkedIn. I think it's got a lot of potential. I read some stat about only 1% of active users on LinkedIn actually post content on it, which is mind-boggling, because it's millions and millions of people are using it, but they're just consuming content. And the few ones that are making it are then doing a great job. They're having a lot of eyeballs landing on their content or their videos, whatever it is. So my strategy really is to get people, to educate people on specifically, my target audience, to educate them on what they need to do in a way, to speak to their frustrations, to speak to their needs, and all those sorts of things, and get them interested in working with me. That's pretty much what it is. But it's not coming from a place of, oh, I need to sell you a service. It's coming from a place of, okay, I need to educate you on some things that you don't know about, because it's normal to not know everything. If you relate to that, and if you relate with my personality as well as I do it, then there's a chance we could work together. There's a chance that maybe I can help you out. If not, that's fine. At least you got something valuable out of it, you know?
Yeah, and you're doing a great job at it, and that's full disclosure. That's how we connected, and I think I've somehow seen one of your posts about fintech. I thought, oh, this is really interesting, and actually, I hope I can get more out of this guy that I haven't met yet, and somehow the conversation led to this. So it's definitely leading to results. But okay, you're good at LinkedIn, and I can see, for example, your posts are getting a lot more interaction, comments, etc., than mine. Can you tell us a little bit about, how you're doing it? Is there a secret sauce? And I think there is,
Right.
but and I don't know if you want to tell us.
So thanks first and foremost. I appreciate that. I don't know that I'm good, but I like it. I enjoy doing it. So what I do is I try to stay consistent with posting daily. I have a daily schedule. I'm not 100% on it every day. I skip days sometimes. I skip weekends. Most times, sometimes I post on Saturdays. Sundays are usually off limits. But what I do is try to stay relevant to my audience, right? So if I work with fintech founders, then I need to understand how they think, what they need done, what their issues are, what their problems are, pain points and things like that. And it's very much, it wouldn't come to a surprise, I don't think, that I'm using part of my skill set to get there. Because, if I'm any good of a researcher, then I should know where these people hang out, what they're doing. I should know how to speak to them to find out what they're experiencing, what struggles they go through. And then I just basically think, okay, what do these people need? And then I think about what content can get out of that. And as for the secret sauce, I don't think there is one. It's just a matter of really understanding what they need and link that to somehow to what I do, right? It needs to be relevant, and I need to enjoy it as well. So as I said earlier, it needs to be something that's connected to my personality as well. So sometimes I post some things that might ruffle some feathers, some things that are a bit controversial, but at the same time, it's just what I think, right? So I need to be comfortable with either, looking like a fool to someone's eyes, but having spoken my truth, what I think about that specific matter. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing, because eventually a lot of people rely on, I'm looking at the B2B space, people prioritize LinkedIn if out of all the platforms. And yet I can see that it's sometimes, even if not many people post, it's still hard to break through. I see with my own post, although I see that being active is yielding results to me as well. But I think your approach and the way you typically offer something, whereas now that I've been looking at this, I typically post something because I want people to watch it. I always have that in mind. I find it hard to remove myself from this. Yeah, it's definitely something interesting, and I see as well as you use animated images and design. It doesn't say, hey, buy my design, but it's obviously it shows that well, you're good at what you do. So it's a really interesting thing, and we'll put the link in the description of the podcast, because I think people can really learn from that. So you. Just to go to dig a bit further into it. So this is obviously, I see you post regularly, it takes time. And perhaps this is prioritizing over something else, right? So how much, let's say, how much time do you invest in this, or is it not the way you count it? Is it something that part of your routine?
So you mean on posting content?
Yes.
Content creation? It's a good question. I definitely consider it part of my routine. It's not something extra I do to get clients or whatever. It's definitely part of what I do now. So it's like, if I'm looking for clients as part of my routine, for example, I'm also creating content, because that's content marketing. Eventually you'll get clients to me, right? Or potential clients, or people, like yourself, like people in the industry, people I would enjoy speaking to.
Sure.
As far as how long it takes, it's still taking longer than I'd like. At the same time, so probably say about, I don't know. Well, let me circle back to the process a little bit. It used to take me about an hour to create a really short post. LinkedIn has a 1,200 character limit, and it's not that long a post. So it used to take me an hour to think and just, create the post and think about the image and think about whatever. And the more I do it, the less time is taken, right? So it's a process. But I would say right now, to create a post and brainstorm, I'm actually creating a bit of a backlog with posts to publish, so I can have some buffer for myself for days that maybe I don't have time. Right now it's taking maybe half an hour to create a post, and I'm trying to bring that down to even less time.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And then it's, well, it's not so much about the ROI if it's part of your routine, but you see the results over time, right?
Exactly.
Okay, wonderful. So again, to finish on, what you do, your company, your business, I'm wondering if this question is fully relevant, but if you had more money, funding, whatever, and you wanted to expand your company, would you spend it on advertising, or how do you know how you would like to spend, some extra cash if you had it?
So are you saying you have some extra cash to give me?
Well, so you never know. I don't, but something happens, something thinks, hey, Rick, well, I've heard you on the podcast. I really believe in your business. I want to be part of it. I give you, give me X%. I give you a big check and expand the business.
Okay.
Do you know where you would spend it?
That's a good question. I'm not necessarily looking to expand yet, but what I love to do is get someone else to do the things I don't like doing, or automate those parts as much as possible. So say some admin, some part of sales in a way. It's not that I don't enjoy it. There's just some automatic parts of it that I just don't feel like a human should be doing it. When it comes to doing having conversations, then I love it. But just before that, just the prospecting or anything like that, possibly if I could hire someone, then that would be great to do that. That would be great, and would allow me to spend more time on experimenting with content maybe, and working with my clients, obviously.
Yeah, sure. No, plus I like as well the concept of not having to necessarily expand and being a very efficient company of one. There's a book called Company of One, which I really like, and it's
that by what's his name?
Jarvis. Paul
Yes,
Jarvis.
yes, I read that.
There you go.
Book.
So it's a book that, again, has liberated my mind in terms of, you don't always need to grow, have more staff.
Yes.
You can. He's built you've built a great business in a few months.
I totally agree with that.
And he's done the same. So that's also part of my inspiration. Okay, so this is great. Thank you so much. Now let's talk a little bit more about the fintech industry and the B2B space in particular. So from what you see, what's the typical challenges that the brands are facing, and what's the typical advice that you can give, even if it's on a case-by-case basis, of course?
So you're talking about fintech in general?
Fintech in general, and we can talk about fintech in general, and then maybe we can take in B2B fintech in particular. But let's see.
Right. Well, I think that most fintechs nowadays are actually founded by people that come from the financial services industry, and it's not necessarily one of the industries that is the most innovative or fresh, so to speak. So I think the challenges come when these people, just call them companies, really, which are made of people eventually, but these companies they have legacy systems, they have old ways of working that used to really be efficient back in the day, but nowadays they're not. So I see some people, especially more experienced founders, they're looking to transition to fintech, that have those old ways of working that don't really jive with the fintech community. It's a young and fresh community. There's lots of apps, there's new technology being adopted. I think they're a bit stuck in the old ways, and that means also being stuck in the mud. It's not a good look for financial services company that transition and think, okay, we'll just move over our system, our legacy system, and our ways of working. That's just not how it works. It's going to transpire in the way you speak to people, and the way you run your business, the way you interact with your employees, and things like that. So I think that's the main challenge, to be honest, getting rid of the old ways of doing things.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I see it all the time, and I see it in particular I used to be in sales in financial services. That was 10 years ago, and I wouldn't dream now of doing anything closer, to what I was doing then. It seems like it's gone, but I think it's still the way of acting that most people still carry on. So what are the then kind of new practices that we could bring into this world, or to the financial world? What do you see in terms of, do you have any particular examples, maybe people you work with that have really been able to transform?
I think, if it comes down to advice, in a way, I would say to new fintechs, or to fintechs in general, I would have to say two things are really important, or rather one thing, but done in two ways. So speak to your users is the main thing for me, and I mean it in two ways. So both literally by speaking to them, by doing research and really getting an understanding of how they interact with your product, but more in general, how they see their problems, the way they experience their problems, say for peer-to-peer lending, for example, just a random example, just understand how people see it and how they experience it, and how they go about it, and then that will open so many different doors. Figuratively, you need to do that with your product as well. And what I'm talking about is hear from your users, speak to them, and then translate that in how your product works and how you use your messaging, or how things work effectively, And the second thing was invest in good design. Invest in a person maybe that understands what good design means, or that takes care of the experience of your product. So a person that actually does that, speaks to their users. If you can't afford that, do it yourself. But that's really important.
Yeah, no, I get this. We had a conversation with people who were dealing with custodians, so who have legacy systems that are 40-year-old, and typically there's a lot of talks about it's antiquated, etc. But eventually, one of the conclusions we reach is that if what's antiquated, no one cares if it's antiquated or not, if they have a great user experience. So if you manage to build a user interface that is 2020 kind of a user interface, then the rest just has to function in the background. So I think that's really important. And do you see any? I think it's something that's absolutely obvious for anybody in B2C, right? You need to have a sleek interface.
Yeah.
Do you see a difference between the enterprise or B2B world and the B2C world?
I mean, B2Bs might be more technical and serious compared to B2Cs, but I don't think they have to be honest. What I think, as I mentioned earlier, they're still dealing with humans on the other side of the screen, on the other side of the line. And I think, it's very important to not confuse B2Bs just because there's just business in the middle and you see these companies as separate entities. You separate them from the people that actually work in them. You need to understand that there are humans that are going to be interacting with your product, whether they work in a company or not. So I think B2Bs can potentially do a lot more, and there's plenty of B2B fintechs that are doing it, which have, of course, a component of consumer-facing product. But I think that there is a little bit of distinction between the two of them. But at the same time, I think that there's kind of, that line is getting a little bit thinner as we go forward.
No, absolutely. And I think now as people go and experience maybe in their home sleek applications, starting, I think the iPad and things like that have started a long time ago, but it's becoming ingrained in our culture. It's very hard to go back to the office and deal with something clunky. I think it's also a cultural shift.
That's a great example.
Okay, now that's great. So thanks so much for the advice, Rick. Let's just finish off with some lighthearted question about you, if you don't mind. So they're just quick and easy, hopefully.
Right.
So there you go. What would you do if you were to choose a different career path?
It will still need to be something that has to deal with people, right? It's still something that, so I guess I'm really fascinated by psychology. So maybe some kind of therapist or a coach.
Any hidden talent that, the general public wouldn't know of?
I don't know. I don't think so. Anything is hidden from me, but I do have a passion for music. I used to play drums when I was younger, and it's something I'm picking back up right now. So I wouldn't call it a talent, but it's definitely a passion. If you wanna talk about talent, then I guess my talent is curiosity. I'm curious about things, so I will try anything that I think is interesting.
Hey, what a great hobby to pick up during lockdown. I'm sure all your neighbors are loving it. And the last one, what's your favorite place for holiday? Maybe the place where you want to go to next when we can travel freely?
So it doesn't have to be a place where I've already been to?
Any place where your favorite place.
Right. I would say Japan. Japan is a fascinating culture, has a fascinating history. I love Japan, so I would love to go there.
Funny enough, I was traveling with my wife, who's Australian. We went to Australia at the end of the year, and we were planning to come back through Japan, and we had to cancel via the lockdown. So I can relate to your wish. Okay, great. So thank you so much, Rick. That was really good to hear. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a great conversation. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening, and thank you to our guests who make this possible. Subscribe to never miss an episode. As this is a new broadcast, if you could give us a 5-star review on iTunes and your favorite podcast player, that would be great. Let's work together to accelerate fintech towards the 2030s.